Howdy, folks. Jay here. Our producer Steve is on vacation right now, so we don't have an episode ready this week. Me and Winslow just recorded yesterday, and I'm going to try and get it edited, so you'll have something to listen to next week. In the meantime, I figured I'd throw something together for the feed so you don't have to leave empty-handed. I tried to record this yesterday, but something fell on my laptop and broke the screen. I'm living out of a van right now, so that kind of just comes with the territory. That stuff breaks easily, so I apologize, but I'm trying my best here. I wanted to do some quick housekeeping first. We're going to be bringing the minisodes back, but they're going to be different and they're going to be better. A lot of people, I got some really good feedback and conversations from them, but also some people didn't like how rambling and unprofessional they were. So this is kind of a send-off for that. Now it's going to be me and Winslow together, and the minisodes are going to focus on individual elements of Something Awful history and culture that might not be enough for a full real episode, but are still fun to talk about. We recorded our first one about the Get Out frog, and the recording was almost an hour long, and we had some good conversations in it. So I think this is a nice compromise between the fact that an episode like steroids or some of the big upcoming ones that we are going to be doing require a lot of time and work to really research and write about, and I don't want to rush them just to meet a deadline and not do the material justice. An addendum to that is that if you have a Something Awful meme or thread or poster or any other piece of Something Awful history that you like and want to hear us talk about, but maybe isn't a full episode's worth of material or a traditional saga, now you can email us about it. I'll give you a shout out for the suggestion if we use it, and if we don't, I'll probably still enjoy reading it and respond with something silly. I do want to clarify, though, that we are not in any danger of running out of episode topics anytime soon. When we first started the show, Winslow asked me how much Something Awful material there was out there, and I put together a spreadsheet of about 70 different sagas that we could cover. And of the episodes we've done, a good chunk of those weren't even on that list. So we have years of material ahead of us, and I keep rediscovering more of it all the time. So I'm happy to keep doing this for a good long while. Also, I'm looking forward to these new minisodes because one of the problems with the show is that everyone is always like, when's Grover House? When's Caro? When's the Rip Line? And these are sagas that have been covered exhaustively by people much smarter and funnier than me. So I really want to make sure I put in the work there because normally I'm competing with general bullshit and poster favorites, whereas when I talk about stuff like that, I'm competing with Dan Olson and Atrocity Guide, and it's really intimidating. But with minisodes, nobody talks about Five Golden Man Babies or the Get Out Frog or Super Mechagodzilla, so I can play the hits, and that's why I want requests. Like, everyone kind of has their own niches on there, and I know there's whole ecosystems on Something Awful that I'm pretty ignorant of that I'm sure have probably produced really funny stories I'm not even aware of. Anyways, while I'm here, I figured why not do the old solo minisode format one more time. So I dug up a post from questions, comments, and suggestions, the feedback subforum where people can discuss moderation and technical issues. This was posted on November 27th, 2020, close to 4 years ago at this point, in a thread discussing what should be done with the dormant front page of the site. And it was posted by a username of Science, which, if you know my lore, was one of my shitty troll accounts, but this was actually a very sincere post that I made, and I'm going to read it here. A series of articles where old forum sagas are presented in a single long-form article with embedded quotes and the lost waffle images uploads backed up and restored would be comparatively easy to make. There's definitely demand for them, since on sites like Twitter and Tumblr, people have already been circulating their own version of this for things like the Death Zip Line and Grover's House for years. May as well just try and get a piece of that and cut out the middleman. And if you're worried about that making the site look bad, you could balance it out with write-ups of cool and good things that have come from the forums as well. Reading that, I'm so used to seeing Grover House all as one word, like a proper noun, that just seeing Grover's House spelled out like that is funny to me. It's like calling a side-scrolling video game a beat them up, or the frog mascot dig them, like that Family Guy joke. Just, I don't know. Anyways, when I made that post, there were some people who were like, yeah, that would be really cool, but nobody in charge really acknowledged it or seemed to care about it. They fell back on the usual of not wanting to do anything content-wise until the technical issues with the site were nailed out, like I've mentioned before. So just over a year later, when those crazy-ass moments in blank history gimmick accounts start blowing up on Twitter, I'm like, oh, hey, you know what? Why not try out that idea I had? This is probably going to get like 2 likes and then die like every other gimmick account I've tried to make. And instead, it turned out I was absolutely right. A lot of people were into that. It blew up, and that's why you're listening to a very unprofessional, neurodiverse man recording in a wheelchair van instead of an actual official Something Awful podcast. I gave this to them. They could have had it, and they chose not to. Mr. Policeman, you could have saved her. I gave you all the clues. like that movie poster. I really want to emphasize, I'm not saying this to brag or to rub it in people's faces or whatever. This isn't like an ego thing. I'm going somewhere with this. So it's been almost 4 years, and my life has been completely changed by all of this, as I've talked about. And the front page of Something Awful is still exactly the same. The last article on there was from early 2020. All the inertia brought on by Something Awful having a new owner and low tax being in the news has long since dissipated. A couple months ago, Jeffrey of Yoss posted a contest to have people design NordVPN banner ads since Something Awful has an affiliate link with them, and it got about a dozen entries, and most of them were super low effort shit posts that were making fun of him for asking people to do unpaid labor on behalf of one of the worst VPN services out there. Man, I love not having sponsors. It was sticky for almost 2 months, that thread, and it got 4 pages of replies. Like, again, I'm not saying this to be mean, I'm just trying to say, like, I'm going somewhere with this. Like, it takes a lot of work to do this show, and that's why I'm having to do minisodes to keep up with the weekly release schedule. But I put in the work, and that's why every week people tune into me and Winslow, because nobody else was willing to do this. I might not be the best person for it, but I'm the only person around doing it. After I did the episode on Boomer Jinx and he got in touch with me and we were talking, he told me something that I thought was really good and important. He said that when he got into movie replica cars, it felt really good to have people clapping for him, and that wasn't something that he'd had before, and that was part of the reason why it was such an appealing world to him. But eventually he realized that people weren't really clapping for him. They were clapping for the Ghostbusters, and he just happened to be the person who was bringing them Ghostbusters. He was representing the Ghostbusters, and that as soon as he stopped representing them, people didn't really care about him that much. And that's one of the reasons why he wound up kind of getting out of the movie replica world and into more personal artwork. And that's the attitude I try and approach this show with. Every week I stand in front of basically a high school graduation's worth of people and talk about this stuff. And I know that they're not really here for me. They're here for the stories, and I'm just providing context and setting tone and, giving Winslow setups for his amazing jokes. And you know what? I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm happy to be here. Even if they're not clapping for me, at least someone's clapping. And it's great. The reason why I'm talking about all this is because there was a very specific moment when I decided I was going to finally try my hand at podcasting. When I started, I was someone who did not make any media. I didn't really I wasn't a known quantity online. I was just some guy. And when I was a gamer, I used to listen to a podcast called Bonfireside Chat that was all about deep dives on the Dark Souls series and the media that influenced it. And when that series ended and the show shut down for the first time, in the final episode, the hosts told the audience that if they had an idea like Bonfireside Chat, to go for it. That if they had a topic that they were passionate about and could talk about at length with great enthusiasm, then there was a podcast to be made and an audience in search of it. And Bonfireside Chat was hosted by Gary Butterfield and Cole Ross. If those names sound familiar to you and you don't listen to the Duckfeed Podcast Network, it's probably because they both guested on the first season of this show. Gary was in Hulk Hogan Meat Shoes and Cole was on the Namaste Ranch episode. Again, I'm not saying all this to brag or to show off. I'm telling you this because that advice that Gary and Cole gave their listeners wound up completely changing my life for the better. So I figured now that I have an audience of my own, the least I can do is pay that forward. Like, if you have a weird niche that you enjoy talking about that you want to share with people, go for it. I am speaking from experience here. If you are someone who is just starting out and is worried that you aren't popular and don't have an audience, a lot of other creators don't care about that because they started out the exact same way. If you have an interesting idea and you're fun to work with, it doesn't matter if you have 200 followers or 200,000 followers. People will want to work with you. Maybe not everyone, maybe not even most people, but the great thing is that if you're willing to put yourself out there and embarrass yourself and own the mistakes that you make, people will start coming to you. That's how I got that guest spot on Western Kabuki that brought some of you that are listening to this right now here. They were working on an internet history miniseries, and I joined their Discord because I was listening to them, and they went, "Oh, hey, it says in your bio that you talk about something awful." Perfect. I was open about the things I was into and I do, and people saw that, and, it was great, And one of the reasons that I want to talk about this is, because I still read Something Awful, and I always see people saying stuff like, yeah, I'd love to make video essays or podcasts, but there's no way I'd be successful at it, so what's the point? And that's so depressing to me because even if you probably won't succeed, you could at least try. And because I used to be one of those people and I used to be in that situation, I'm going to be really mean because this is something that I realized eventually and I wish I had figured out a lot sooner. It's that, if you're like I was, then your free time is probably not all that valuable. All the time and energy I spend podcasting now would have just been spent consuming media. If if all of this podcasting stuff I tried to do wound up being a huge failure and nobody listened, all I lost out on was clearing map markers in video games or marathoning TV shows I wouldn't remember or care about in a month. Like, and what my first podcast ever did, it only got a pilot episode made. It was called the 0451 Club, and the premise of it was going to be, like Gary and Cole said, it was going to be a bonfire side chat for immersive sims, and it was called the 0451 Club because that's a number that shows up in those. And the idea was like the pilot episode that I recorded was about the intro area of Deus Ex, and it was with someone who didn't really play first person shooters. And again, only did that one, but it was a fun experience. I learned a lot, and it made me realize, yeah, I enjoy this. And then my next one I did was one about the TV show Louie, that lasted about a dozen episodes. We topped out at around 30 listeners on that one. And now I have this one. And you keep failing, but you keep trying, and each failure adds to that. And that's why I really wish I'd realized that earlier, because that attitude on something awful that I see people embody is kind of the opposite of that. It's like nobody ever wants to try or do anything, because if you try it once and you fuck up or it's not successful, then for the rest of your posting career, whenever you try and do anything, someone's just going to bring up your failure and be like, oh, hey, aren't you the guy who tried to do that Deus Ex podcast that didn't even get more than one episode? Like, I never posted about it on there. Obviously, I'm just using my own examples here, but you get what I'm talking about here. Yeah, but just the great thing about all this is that even if most people are just clapping for the Ghostbusters, you will meet some people who genuinely like you for you. Everyone knows how hard it is to make friends as an adult, and it fucking rules to have people just start coming up to you and being like, hey, I like your work, I think we'd get along, and then you do, and you have a new friend now just for doing the thing that you already wanted to do in the first place. I mean, it's not perfect. I definitely empathize a lot more with Lotax now from the few bad experiences I've had with the type of people he had to deal with all day, every day for decades. And also, embarrassing yourself in front of or being rejected by people who you look up to and admire is an awful feeling, but the good that comes out of that is so much more powerful. It's like Monsters Inc. Like, I don't care about that little tank of negative feelings, because when something good happens, you get that big tank, and it more than makes up for it. Anyways, I know this is one of those rambly ones, but I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed the new minisodes that are going to be coming out in between proper episodes. We've got some really big sagas with really big guests coming up, and I'm really excited to get to finally cover some of those big stories that people have been asking about. As always, you can send us emails about minisodes you'd like to cover or anything else at iftipod@gmail.com. We're also iftipod at Patreon. I'm jaybrandstetter everywhere. Winslow Domain, Winslow's everywhere. He's at Calculations on Instagram. Pre-order his card game. And also our producer Steve, he put out an ambient album when he was on his vacation. Was like, one of them was an artist retreat, so I'll include a link in this. I listened to the whole thing. It's pretty neat. It's based on him doing like nature recordings and then mixing it into ambient music. Like, he's really cool. I'm really looking forward to getting him on the show sometime. And that's the end of what I wrote here, but I'm gonna go off script here because yesterday I had some really nice stuff happen to me. I had I got a DM from someone who used to be a moderator on Something Awful, and they were someone who used to, back in the Guy Man days we'd feud a lot and butt heads, and I remembered them because they were one of the only people that ever tried to be nice to me when I was doing all this. They were like, they were like, you only post like a regular person in the Deus Ex thread, so we're going to be doing an activity. We'd like you to join in it, even though you're like, not supposed to post anymore. Back when before people knew all this. And I threw it back in his face, and I like reported his post and left like a pissy reason because I was like, and it's because that's what I was, that was what you did when you were in that character mode. And even at the time, it felt really bad. So like, this person is just trying to be nice to me, but I can't I'm wrapping up this whole story, as it were. I can't let this, falter now, because that was the point where I was just kind of actively trying to get banned so I could stop doing it. That's part of it. It's like, oh, no wonder I wasn't making anything creative. I was wasting all my creative energy on this bullshit performance art thing for no one. That also made a lot of people's days worse. But the reason why I bring that up is because when they were messaging me, we were talking, one of the things they mentioned is he was like, I'm sorry I was mean to you on the forums. Like that basically is like, you were obviously going through a lot, and now they know the context, and I can tell that you're getting better. I know I said some mean things to you, and I'm sorry about that. And that really shook me, because I can handle people being mean to me. People can be like, fuck you, you're a hack, you're a grifter, nobody's listening to your podcast, it's all a botnet. That's an actual conspiracy theory, by the way, that the reason why the Twitter account blew up isn't because a bunch of people know about Something Awful and want to learn about it. It's because there is a botnet that is that, like, the guy who runs Crazy Ass Moments in New Metal History made a post about joining a Discord, about being invited to a Discord for people who run Crazy Ass Moments accounts, and it being, like, a big marketing thing. And that was really funny, but also, like, and I believed it at the time, but I have to admit, like, I've never seen anything else about that or heard anything else about it, and the guy who runs Crazy Ass Moments in New Metal History does, like, he is a little bit of a prankster. Like, once he said he was getting arrested and, like, took pictures, like, in the courthouse and stuff, and it was just like, oh no, that was just a joke or whatever. It's like, he does stuff like that, so I could conceivably see a world where that was just a joke, that, but even if it's real, like, that wasn't a thing at all for me. But yeah, the thing is that was like a big, like, that is like a big network, like, and that basically I am a useful idiot for this botnet of accounts, and that, like, no, and it's just so funny to me because I love the idea of, like, you, the person listening, yes, you, now you are a part of the lore of this because you do not exist. So I'm sorry to break the news to you. But yeah, anyways, yeah, like, I can handle people being mean to me, but, like, when people are nice and are, like, and it's, I just have no idea to handle it, and it fucking destroys me. And I really appreciate how cool people can be. And that's one of the things that's so nice about this, is it's like, you know, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, like, I don't know if I've said it before on the podcast before, but one of the reasons it makes me so happy that Fred is doing so well is because I genuinely think that he is someone who is important, because I think showing that it is possible to get out of that sort of environment, that sort of space, is very important, because a lot of the people that are in it, and not just on the internet, like, if you read any sort of, like, hate, like, research into hate groups and stuff, like, a big part of it is that idea of, like, you are too far gone. You cannot function outside of this space, that, like, that's how the space that people operate in on. And it is very scary to have to, you know, to leave something that you are familiar with that is no longer fulfilling to you and move on to new things. But but yeah, Fred is very important to me because he is someone who got out. And I think that showing that it is possible to get out, and that when you get out, your life is so much better and more fulfilling, is a really important thing, because a lot of people in these situations don't feel like they have any future or hope. They don't feel like they have a way out. And I think that is really important. And legitimately, that's one of the things about, like, this whole thing that kind of just, like, shakes me, is realizing that in a weird way, like, I'm kind of becoming that. Like, that's why Fred is important to me. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to share this on here, is because, like, there is a time when, like, I was, like, one of the things that he told me that kind of blew my mind, that, like, maybe he shouldn't have told me this, maybe he's letting me know too much about how powerful I am, but he said that he literally, like, rage quit the forums for 6 months because he got so mad at me that it made him realize that being on the forums wasn't like a good use of his time. And I apologize if that wasn't something I was supposed to mention on here, nice person, but just to emphasize that, yeah, just a couple years ago, like, this person hated my guts, and now we are, you know, we've only talked a couple times, but, like, wow. Because, yeah, I used to be someone who was very isolated, someone who didn't really have friends or any creative outputs. I was just someone who gamed and posted and just sort of ambiently was miserable and unfulfilled. And I know that a lot of people are in that. And I want you to know that, you know, that's the thing, is, like, I would listen to stuff like this and be like, oh, yeah, this guy did it, but there's no way that I could do that. I'm not good enough to do that. It's like, you don't have to be the best at it. You don't even have to be super good at it. You just have to, like, be willing to put yourself out there. And that's the thing we always keep going back to. And I hope that if you're somebody out there who is unfulfilled with living, like, a life like I used to, and is interested in kind of growing out of that, like, go for it. If you need a guest on your show to get it started or something, send me an email. I love guesting on stuff. The writing is the bottleneck on this. I am almost always ready to record for stuff. That's why I love guesting on things. And also, you know, I'm someone who's easy to get along with. I'm pretty technically competent. Like, you know, I know how to, like, export my WAV files with the 32-bit float and everything. I have a Dropbox thing so I can send the files. You don't have to worry about me doing a WeTransfer or whatever. Anyways, I hope you have a great day. I'm looking forward to some of the new episodes we're having you. And again, if you don't like these rambling solo minisodes, this is probably going to be the last one, because going forward, they're going to be a team effort. So, yeah. I guess this is a long roundabout way of saying that I'm from the internet is a Dark Souls-like. No follow-up questions.